Hi everyone, and welcome. My name is Kajsa. I am one of the Motherhood producers, together with Hattie Harding and Tillie. I am so excited to welcome you all to today's panel talk, Motherhood, and to MESA Festival. I am shortly going to hand over to our wonderful host, Shelley Maxwell, after I just go over some quick housekeeping. So, as a part of the Future Innovators of East London Dance Programme, or the Fi.ELD for short, myself and the cohort of 2020 have worked incredibly hard to bring you MESA Festival. So MESA is running events all week long, and if you want to get involved in more events, tickets are still available to buy all this week by heading to Eventbrite. You can also head to our social media. Instagram handle is the Fi.ELD, and you can follow the ticket link from there. I would also like to say a big thank you to our partners, Represent Creative, One Dance UK, and the Next Choreography Festival, which is a part of Siobhan Davis Dance. As many other festivals and events, MESA have also had to relocate to a virtual place. So we just really want to say a big thank you for joining us on screen today. And as we all know by this point, technology can be quite temperamental. So if there are any technical difficulties, we kindly ask you to bear with us as we try and sort it out. I want to introduce you to our two wonderful BSL interpreters that are joining today's talk, Sophie and Bridget. If you are experiencing any accessibility issues or any technical issues, please send MESA Festival, which are the host of this webinar, a message, and we'll do our very best to help you. Finally, there will be a Q&A at the end of this talk. So do feel free to post your question in the box that says ask a question throughout the talk. And without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce you to Shelley Maxwell and the Motherhood panel, Thea Gajic and Grace Okereke.
Hi. Hi guys. Thank you so much, Kajsa. So I'll kick us off just by doing a short introduction to myself and the two panelists. Welcome everyone to this panel on motherhood. My name is Shelley Maxwell, and I am a movement director, choreographer, writer, and co-director of a new production company called Bennu Creative House, in addition, of course, to being a mother to a 6-year-old girl. I have the pleasure of welcoming today Grace Okereke, and I'm just going to do a little short snippet, Grace, about you. So Grace has been in the dance sector for 18 years, delivering on a wide range of activities, spanning across performance, productions, touring, fundraising, and strategic development. She runs her own company, Uprise Rebel, that supports Black female choreographers and administrators, as well as developing inclusive audiences. Grace produces work that is artistically ambitious, culturally enriched, and wrapped in social and political context. She is the mother to a 4-year-old boy named Harris. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you very much.
Our next panelist is Thea Gajic. Thea is an actress, writer, and director born and raised in South London. Her first short film run was BFI Postroom's Pick of the Month, Short of the Week, and won the New Talent Award at the BFI Future Film Fest. It also earned her a Sundance Ignite Fellowship. With Film London, she created the short film Eli on their London Calling 2018 slate, and also a commissioned short for Stormzy. She's currently developing her feature film Surviving Earth with the BFI, and is mother to an 11-month-old boy, Novo, who is currently sharing the screen with her. Good morning, Thea, and welcome, Novo.
Good morning, thank you.
So to kick us off both, I thought it's interesting that something that has been posed or used generally in the past has been this idea of career versus motherhood, and that usage of the word versus in the middle. They used to be seen as oppositional and not complementary. And I think my question really is, what about if they are interchangeable? So versus career versus motherhood, why not motherhood versus career? And Grace, when we spoke a few weeks back, you spoke about taking a year off to spend with Harris, and you mentioned that you didn't want to go back to work. Can you speak a little bit about that and about that kind of experience?
Yeah, I think first of all, to your first point, the kind of the versus, motherhood versus career. I think that in one sense, I've always known I wanted to be a mother, or I assumed I would be a mother. I'd wanted it and assumed that it would happen. And luckily it did happen. And I thought about, I didn't think about it deeply, but I knew that I wanted to shape my career, my working career, around that premise. So for example, I used to work in organizations, so in offices a lot, and that whole setup I knew was never going to work for me personally, but also, being a mother, having to, drop offs and then pick ups and things like that, and then you can't do anything in between, you have to be at work, there's no flexibility if they're sick, so on and so forth. So I knew quite a few years ago that I was going to work from home and be freelance. And so that is what I ended up doing. And I did that and then I think a year and a half, no, 2 years later, I became a mother. So I was slightly preparing for that in a random type of way. And I liked the time off. That's the simple answer, because there are challenges when you're freelance. You don't have maternity leave. You get obviously the government maternity leave, but it's not much money. You don't have that comfort of knowing you're going back to something. And I was very much aware of that, and I didn't want to go back to anything. I wanted to stop what I was doing, enjoy my child, enjoy my life at that moment in time, because that, they do say, and I was very much aware that you won't get those moments back, and they're only so small for a short period of time, and it's so true. And so therefore, I just liked it. I didn't like the stress. I wasn't trying to talk to anybody. I was like, I had a friend who was keeping me in with the gossip, and that was all I needed. I was like, who's leaving where and what they doing? Oh, okay, interesting. Thank you for that. So I was kind of like knowing a little bit what's going on, but that was all I needed. And I just enjoyed having that time off. And I think that is also partly to do with the industry and how you work, and it's just so full on all of the time. So that was great. And then going back. So now we're back to me choosing to be freelance, not having anything that was secure to go back to, and also not feeling like I was ready. I wanted another year. If I could have another year off and just be with my child, pull myself together, that would be fantastic. And so when I did go, but I couldn't afford that. So when I was looking to go back, I said to myself, I just don't want to go back into producing. And I can't remember if we've had this conversation, but that would be quite a while ago. I don't know if you remember, I said I was looking at everything else. I was trying to go into a new field, which was crazy. First of all, you just had a child, you're coming back, now you're trying to change your career path. And I was looking at fundraising for the charity sector. I was like, I've had some success with Arts Council applications. I could be a fundraiser. No actual background in fundraising or development in that way. But, I still persevered. I got some interviews. I moved forward in a sense. But I didn't want to come back because it's just really difficult. I felt that. And I felt the struggle that I would have. Say that again?
Nova's obviously agreeing with you on that
No,
point.
but you understand where I'm coming from. It's really hard, you know, to then also know you're not paid as well. So there's the worry about how much income I can get. And then for the first year, the income basically covered the cost of childcare, which is quite sad because, you know, there are other bills as well. Yeah, so that was it. That was my struggle, the reason I didn't want to come back, because it was just, I knew how difficult you throw yourself into your work because there's no choice. As a producer, at that point in my career, I was the project manager, I was the fundraiser. I managed to avoid marketing, but, you know, administrator.
Well,
I was doing quite a lot of roles, so it was that. But I did come back.
You've encapsulated so many points, Grace, just in that response that you've done, because we speak about circumstances, and I like the word choices, because we have to remember that our life is dictated by the choices that we choose, but sometimes the choices that we make are dictated by circumstance. So, you know, whether you're a single parent or if you have you know, worried about salary earnings, your socioeconomic standing, and your own personal ambitions and desires for your career, everything kind of informs the decisions and your choices that you're going to make, in addition to being mother to a little person. So it's never easy, I feel, for anyone. Thea, you are currently in your first year. You know, on the brink of finishing this year that Grace just spoke about for herself. And I think even going back before, you know, Nova coming into the world, going back to being pregnant and to having to deal with pregnancy while you're juggling your career. Can you speak a little bit on, as we said, whether it's a career versus motherhood, motherhood versus career, or blowing that all up and just trying to balance everything?
Yeah, I think I kind of, when I thought about having a baby and when I was pregnant, I always kind of took this approach where I thought, I'm gonna just do both. I'm gonna bring him wherever I can when he's born, and just do it like really fiercely and not really care about if people felt a certain way about it in certain spaces, because I always kind of felt like it should be there should be more space for it, and it should be more accessible for mothers in the creative industries to be able to bring their young children to certain meetings. And obviously it's not convenient everywhere, but just at least for some things. And I think, and obviously being pregnant, that didn't really change for me, being pregnant, because I could still go wherever I wanted. And even some auditions I had, they knew I was pregnant and they still wanted me to audition, which was really nice. And I was in a BBC Three show called Enterprise, and they actually wrote my pregnancy into the show, so that I could stay in the series, which was really, really great. So I was 7 months pregnant when I filmed that series. So that was all very doable for me during pregnancy. And then I guess once he was born in November, so we had a few months before lockdown started. So yeah, I was bringing him to script meetings and like breastfeeding him under the table and stuff like that, where I could. So I kind of balanced both immediately because I had to, and I still had thank you for clapping for me. And I still had I had like a script deadline the following January, after he was born, so I couldn't really stop working in that sense, even though I did really want to, but I couldn't. So yeah, I kind of just had to balance straight away. Yeah.
And it is that kind of juggling act. I mean, I hate to bring in that kind of stereotypical saying, but it does feel that way sometimes, because for me as well, I had to find that balance of bringing her with me to teach at the
Yeah.
time, or, you know, if I could take her with me into rehearsal spaces, and not all spaces are kind of malleable to that.
Yeah.
And therefore it comes, as Grace said, to childcare, which is not inexpensive at all if you don't have a support system. And, you know, is the industry really set up to support us mothers with regards to childcare? Because many institutions are not. Versus in the States, they have creches in offices and creches set up in the theatre industry as well. But Grace, I was reading up on a website called Dance Mama. And for those who've never heard of Dance Mama before, it's a good resource. It's actually a resource about mothers in the dance industry. And in the interview, you stated that the biggest thing that changed when I returned back to work was me. My life and responsibilities had grown, and priorities revolved around that. I didn't tolerate things that I felt were not of value to my progression or finances, or took me away from my child without good reason. I can't say I have the perfect balance, as there's a juxtaposition of needing to provide an income, but it is the mantra that sits within me. And I can see, Thea, that you're nodding as well.
Yeah.
What resonated with you, Thea, in what I just read from Greg?
I think the point about like not I forgot the word left me, but about not compromising on like the work you want to do and the paycheck and things like that. And I think and yeah, things that take you away unnecessarily from your baby, those really resonated with me. Because yeah, I think it just gives you that fire and that boost that you probably needed before you had a baby, to say no to more things and demand better pay or demand better opportunities and create, I guess, a more tailored path for yourself. And I think your baby kind of allows you to navigate that in a better way for the both of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Grace, has this mantra then still guided you? I'm not quite sure how long ago that article was.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Thank you. That was last year, maybe. I don't even know what year we're in now. It feels like everything was a lifetime ago. Like that's how it feels now. That was either last year, and Lucy, who's Lucy McCradden, she and I used to work together at Rombear when I worked at Rombear briefly, and that's her company, Dance Mama. And my man, it's exactly, I forgot about that, and I was like, did I write that? Look at me. But yeah, it's true. There's not time to waste anymore. We wasted a lot of time in the past just doing things, I think, trying to get experience. And there came a point where I was like, I've got experience and I've got bills to pay and a child to, bring up. And so if I set my daily rate, and I don't drop it. And part of that daily rate as well, and not compromising, is simply because I can't afford to compromise. Childcare in the beginning, childcare could be up to like $1,000 a month. And it could be just under that, like it was something like 800 or just something like that for 3 days a week, not even 5 days a week. So there is no real way around that, and you do become fiercer. I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I have that personality type anyway, but it was just I just was, enough is enough. My child is a priority. And then sometimes when you're working a lot, and I don't know if you're going to get to this, you have that guilt. You have that guilt when you're just working. So when you were talking about taking your child to meetings and taking your child into rehearsals, I basically stopped going to rehearsals. I don't because I'm the producer, it's great to be there, but I don't have to be there. Things still keep happening, and I can see what is going on if it's filmed. you know, things could be sent to me. I can come in, I can breeze in and I can breeze out, you know. But in the old days, I would sit in the corner in the studio and know what is going on. And now I basically stopped doing that. However, I do work at my desk here. This is my front room. So I'm working at my desk. And when you have a child and you have to do like more administrative work, that is really challenging. You can't focus because they always want something, always, and wait till Noah starts asking for food and snacks and all of that stuff. You just like,
I mean, as soon as he sees the laptop, he just wants to slap it.
yeah.
Literally.
I've got a picture with my son just old laptop. So yeah, rock on with that. So basically it's really tricky to actually keep working, but because of finances, you know, he only started going to nursery 3 days a week for the last year because we could only afford 2 days a week because it's extortionate. So basically, no, the mantra is the same. It's like if it's not worth my time, you know, if it's not giving me any value in terms of professionally or financially, then I'm not doing it. And that's just that simple. I'll just have a good day with my son.
No, I totally agree with you, because for me, I don't have a support system in London because I'm from the Caribbean, so all my family's in Jamaica. But I remember feeling completely ecstatic when Marley reached the age of the government was going to give me money to assist with childcare, because it opened up more working hours to me, because now I could afford to take these jobs, because it is a balancing act financially as well. But I just wanted to say a little quote. It's a quote from Plato, which says, "Our need will be the real creator. So your needs will give you the impetus to then create based on that." Like mother is the tool of invention. And I want to think about that idea of pivoting. So this term is being used a lot now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I just thought, but can we talk about pivoting as a result of becoming a mother? Because mothers have been pivoting for years, for decades, for centuries. So did either of you pivot once you fell pregnant or once your child was at a certain age? Professional and creatively, we've all already kind of started speaking about that, Grace, with you, with regards to your differences when you went back into the rehearsal space and how you pivoted to make your life a little bit more amenable. But Thea and Grace, I don't know if you have any kind of other things to add with regards to pivoting because of motherhood.
I guess it's just like constantly with everything. It feels like just, I think especially pivoting between like trying to find time for yourself and then, which I still have failed to do. And then like also I think at the moment I'm kind of struggling with like, and stopping and starting kind of, I don't seem to have time. Like when I have something to do, I can only manage to do like, so say it's the writing of the script. I don't really have a lot of time to do all the other stuff that comes with art, whether it's like doing in-depth research about whatever I'm working on, or just spending some time browsing the internet for, I don't know, like interviews and things I used to watch and find inspirational. I kind of just have to get the job done now, which I find sad, because a lot of what I love about my work is all the extraneous things as well, which informs what I create. I guess.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No. I totally agree. Like I don't watch a show. Well, first of all, I only started watching, I don't even watch TV anymore, so that stopped. And I've only started watching Netflix in the past year, because there was just like, it was look after, work, eat, cook, like it was everything else I needed to do that needed to get done. There was no, and I find like Netflix or YouTube just my chill time. I didn't have that for like a few years. I'm just reintroducing it. Now he's old enough to just sit over there and watch the iPad by yourself and or we'll sit next to each other. So I totally agree with that. And I think that there's a constant pivot. I think in life mostly, especially in our field, we all pivot. So it's just a different look, different, an additional element to add onto what's going on in life, and constantly, because I never signed up to, Shelley, like you, my family live around the world, and my husband is not British, he's American, so his family live over there. So there is no real like, oh, can I just drop him off over, you know, and then come back over to you and I'll come back. So we almost had to create that, but that took years to do, you know. So there's no support, but I've never also felt that, I've never subscribed to the fact that being a parent or a mother is like my goal. It's as my only kind of final goal in life, and that one thing I want to focus on, because I have got ambitions in my career. And one thing, I don't know if this is pivoting, but one thing that I had to keep thinking about is how to not stop with those ambitions and those desires, and how to adapt them. A lot of the work that I've been trying to do and have been leading up to is working internationally. How do you do that? So for the first 3 years before school, he's just started school this September, he would come. It wasn't easy. So my husband and he would come to some, not all of them, but there were moments where we would have a year. He's very well traveled for a 4-year-old. He's got a few, well, there are a lot of European ones, but you know, he's been to Australia twice. Like, come on, he's 4. So and that wasn't easy, and we had to work it in financially to everything that was going on. But that was my way of trying to integrate him to life. And I knew I had a very into my working life, I should say. And I knew there was a very short amount of time that would happen. Now he's in school, I don't have that opportunity, so I have to be quite careful about, you know, and considered about what I'm doing. So, you know, there is always these constant challenges, and as the child grows and the development is different, you get more opportunities to do stuff, so it's not as difficult, but then some other things become a little bit more difficult because you're restricted because of school, and you know, you can only go out in the half term, so then you have to make the decision, well, how long can I be away in term time, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think that it's a constant negotiation.
It is absolutely a constant negotiation. I think about when you have to fill forms in now, you know, they always ask you about dependence. And that word, you have independent, and then you have dependence. And I think about the sense of identity and self, and the self that you were before pregnancy and motherhood, and having that kind of independence in your own decision making, and then what having a dependent does to alter that. The stakes are different. And you spoke about the feelings of guilt, Grace, earlier. So for me, I also took a year off of work to spend with my child. I was able to do that, and I appreciated, one, being able to do it, because it's not an easy thing to do. But for me, at the end of the year, I found myself needing to go back to work, because like the both of you, I'm still looking at my career and my own goals and ambitions. And I had to come to terms with, I am still Shelley, and I still need to navigate what that is in the world. And I remember having a conversation, I can't say with my 1-year-old, but more at my 1-year-old, about the fact that I've given you these 12 months now, and I've nurtured you, and I've given you everything I possibly can for this year. I need you to allow me this time. And I think by doing that with her, I gave myself permission to go out into the world, and to not feel as guilty. And it was hard, because I still felt guilt when I was in the rooms and the spaces, and I still would rush back, you know, to get her quickly from nursery and to carry her back home. But it was hard. But Thea, I watched one of the short films on your website called Yogurt Shit. And the main character says, "Nobody crushed my maternal dreams. They made me ride to the delivery room on a unicorn." And when the main character said that, I chuckled because, you know, the responsibility of society to offer a balanced view of the realities of motherhood. And many times it's skewed in the way that it doesn't show you the bad. It doesn't speak about the lows. It just kind of pushes this wonderful romanticized version of what being a mother is. And so I wonder if you could speak a little bit about the concept behind the film and just on, you know, I guess your opinion on society's responsibility to offer a less biased view.
Yeah, I guess that that whole kind of monologue came from I guess it kind of stemmed from my birth story. So my birth ended up being complicated in the end, and I just wasn't like, I don't know, no one kind of prepared me for it. Even though I'd read books and stuff, everything was, obviously I understand why, you know, no one wants to fearmonger birth for mothers and everything, but I just felt like everything I read was so positive that I just was not even expecting kind of anything to go wrong. Thank you. Even though obviously I knew it could, but I guess, I don't know, you kind of have this thing like, oh, it won't happen to me or whatever. Like I had that anyway while I was pregnant. And then I just felt kind of blindsided by, I don't know, care professionals. Like none of the classes I had gone to, they didn't really speak about the common things that happen. So like I had a hemorrhage and I lost a litre of blood and some more, but they didn't really. And then when I speak to people who are midwives, they say, oh, that happens a lot, but no one really said that to me. They always only spoke about like the worst thing that could happen. They don't speak about the common things. Or if it's like I had a second degree tear, but they only always want to say like, oh, you might have a little tear, or it is common to have a first degree and but so then everything past that, which is also common, they don't want to scare you about, or just stuff like that. And then also just people speaking openly about birth stories, I found very rare. No one really, I just hadn't really heard any, and I knew people who had children, and they kind of, if something did happen, they would just skim over it. And obviously I didn't know any better before I had one, so I wouldn't go into more details about things, I guess, either, to ask the question. And then also I guess it's the whole like image of motherhood on social media. I think it's getting a lot better now. I do see a lot of more balance in what people share, but there's also just this kind of fear to show your vulnerability, I guess. Like even if something did happen that was had a negative effect on the person, they still, I don't know, it's like they're scared to show how much, if it did sadden them or if it was a traumatic experience, they still kind of brush it with like a smiley, oh, but it's fine because now I've got my bundle of joy. And it's like, it's okay to cry and it's okay to feel all of these emotions. And yeah, I guess it just kind of, after I gave birth, it just kind of shocked me. And I was like, wait, I've just been, nobody told me any of this would happen. And then you start feeling like, oh, if you're sad, because I cried like every day for a week, and then it's like, oh no, maybe I have postnatal depression, even though it's just normal, even if you do have it or if you don't, regardless. But yeah, I guess that's my long-winded answer.
No, not long-winded at all. Very realistic, because it's about the highs and the lows. Because when I watched Yogurt Shit, that's what I thought of. I was like, you know, the character is at a point where there are, you know, she's feeling low and there are low moments, but she's folding the baby's clothing, and that in itself, that act is bringing some fulfillment and joy. And then you speak about the highs, and it's that kind of balance between both, because I do have friends who have birth stories that they would utilize the word trauma to describe them, because birth can be traumatic. And even if the labor itself is not gruesome or traumatic, after birth, you know, going through that, the energy of your body, it is very physiological with regards to how you feel now being a mother and being thrusted into this new. And there isn't really a support system in place. I remember speaking with my husband's mother, and because I found it insane that the day after I gave birth to my kid, because I lost over a pint of blood, so I was okay, but I had to stay overnight. And then, you know, they're like, yeah, you're fine. And I was off on my merry and we had this tiny little person that we carried and we're supposed to be driving home. And we were just like, no one's going to tell us anything. No one's going to understand. Like, we literally drove at, I don't know, maybe 15 or something miles per hour. It was crazy. And, you know, she was just saying, like, back in the day for them, sometimes they were allowed 3 days in, and you'd have people coming and talking about breastfeeding and all of that. And nowadays it's just like in and out. And go, Grace.
Actually, I was in hospital for a week. I was in labor I went in on Sunday morning and he came Tuesday early morning. So, and I had an epidural, and for other reasons, I was there for a week. But I did cry by the Friday. I was like, I'm scared, like I literally, I couldn't hold it in. And then the nurse said, this is really normal to feel emotional, because I was just like so over everything. With what you were talking about, Thea, about the birth, I had friends that I luckily I had a few friends that had just had children 1 year before, or actually at the same time. I lived in flats at that point, and my downstairs neighbor and I were 7 weeks apart. She was first, and another friend that I share with, Shelley, we were like a few months apart. And no, they don't tell you. And then they say, because they don't want to scare you, and everybody's birth is different. And I understand that. But so what? There would have been some things I would have appreciated to know. Like you, I lost a liter, I think a liter. I was holding my child after birth, and I actually fainted. I remember my
so did I.
It was going, and I had to call my husband's name to take the baby, and I'm gone. Then I opened my eyes, and then like all these doctors and nurses washing it, and I'm like
exactly the same thing.
And I didn't get told how bad I torn. The nurse told me, when you go to take out your stitches, she's like, oh, you lost a lot of blood. Oh, and you've got a bad. I was like, no, mommy, I just left the hospital. No one wants to tell me how badly everything was. And I find that it's more of a disservice. But I understand, because when you have your first pregnancy, you're terrified about what childbirth is. But to be quite frank, by the time, if you go through your full, I was a week late, I think. If you go through your full term, you're just ready to pop that baby out. Like, you don't even get at that point. And I just think it does do us a bit of a disservice. And it doesn't have to be everybody, you know, all the details, because everybody goes through it differently, but just more realistic, as you said, like what is really common, to bleed, you know, to bleed out a lot, to tear, and how uncomfortable it is, how you can't sit down, and how you don't even want to look at yourself, like, how am I gonna shower? And I ask for laxatives. Everybody that wants children, this is my thing. When you have your child, ask for a laxative, because like, I'm scared, literally shitless.
Literally. And I don't know if you had to. I had to go on iron tablets. I don't know if you did, because of the blood loss, which obviously makes you constipated, and then it's like, oh, now I'm even more scared.
Laxatives, I'm not going through anything. Let it all just pour out. This is not the nicest thing to say, but
no, but it is. I mean, it comes back to that idea of the body. You know, the body is so many things, because the body is political, but the body is also scientific. And our body is streaming with hormones. We're going through all of these changes that you go through throughout the trimesters. And it alters the makeup of what's happening inside of you. And, you know, you're expected to continue living your day-to-day life normally. And then again, after giving birth. And, you know, let's also think about those people who have multiple children, but also those who have lost children. Yeah. And the mothers who have given birth and not had the fortune of watching their little ones grow up in this world, because they have gone through all of that experience that we fortunately have. But then with that, on top of it, the idea of loss, you know, for a mother to have to deal with moving forward. I am aware of time, and I'm just going to raise one more kind of question or point before we go into the Q&As. So for those who'd like to pop questions in the box, please feel free to do so now, and we'll try to get through as many as we can before we finish. So I'm just going to reference one more of your films, Thea, and that's Your Mother's Absence. So could you tell us a little bit about the film? Because I wonder about our viewpoints on mothers, on our mothers, and how our views have changed as a result of becoming mothers ourselves. But firstly, on your film, Your Mother's Absence, there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I lost my dad in 2015 from an overdose. So it was like really sudden. And I think after that, I just kind of had some kind of like, what's it called? Like maybe separation anxiety. And I just kept thinking, I think because it was so random, I just kept thinking that something was going to happen to my mom, like all the time, like literally randomly. It would be really unreasonable, like images would pop into my head about things that might happen to her if I'm not in the house, or if she was gone out too long, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I decided to make this film. For those who haven't seen it, it's just about a young woman waiting for her mum to come home. And the mum isn't answering the phone, and she knows she's gone to a certain area, and then her friend tells her there's been a crash in that same area. And so the person starts assuming that it was her mum who's been involved in this car accident. And so it's just her kind of going through the motions and waiting for her mum to come home, which she does. But yeah, that's what the film's about, and that's kind of what inspired it. Yeah.
Because it made me wonder about, and I call it micro anxieties. So you have, you know, everyone talks about anxiety in a very big way, but what about the micro anxieties, especially during COVID and this time? And for me and Grace, because I sent my child back to school, it really is worrisome, if I'm being honest, at times, the decisions that we make that will impact their lives. And I just found myself thinking about my mother and how much trouble and drama I put her through when I was younger without realizing it. So my view on motherhood has now been altered upon reflection based on my own experiences. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Grace.
Yeah, I think first of all, with what you're saying, Thea, I have had that. I now lost both parents, but there is always this kind of worry that I had at some point of anything going wrong. You know, you just always worry. And then with the July bombings, I'm from East London originally, well, at least I was born from, but I'm brought up in East London. And my mother was out, I was out, got a phone call from my brother, and I'm like, we were like, where's my mother? You know, like there are things that happen that make you worry. And almost when I had my son, I just remember thinking, I'm actually so scared that you're scared something's going to happen. You know, I would make sure when I went to bed, I listened to his breathing. I didn't really sleep, so I was just making sure he was breathing all the time, because you worry about, you know, cot deaths, and because they don't know why cot deaths happen, you're just like, okay, so I just have to be extra cautious. So I kind of relate to that, but mine got transferred to my child. And then, Shelley, was your question about anxiety? Sorry.
Well, no, that was just my commentary on what Thea had said with regards to, you know, as parents, I feel like we have micro anxieties constantly.
Oh yeah, so that's definitely, it's a little bit less now, but I'm constantly, you know, you walk on the street, he has to walk on a certain side, because, you know, I'm constantly worried about, you know, making sure, you just want to keep them safe, and that's it. And you don't know how, you know, there are some ways that you know what to do, but then when you do, they go to school, you're like, okay, but I don't know everybody there, I don't know what's going on. You know, there's like, when so Shelley, Harris went to nursery at 1, just like use, and we kept picking, like he was there for, it's a day at the nursery, so we were picking up after 4 hours. 4 hours, like we're paying for a day, and it's not cheap. And then we were just like drop him off really late, like 10 o'clock in the morning. That's late, because, you know, people are dropping off at 8, some people at 7, but, you know, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And then about 3 o'clock, we're just like, should we get him? We should get him. Let's just get him. I miss him. Let's just get him. Okay, like literally. So yeah, it got better.
I feel that one. Again, it's all about that balance, isn't it? So I'm going to pull us into the Q&A section now. So we have a question. I'm going to read a quotation that the person has written. The quote is from Sam Smathers, who's the Chief Executive of the Fawcett Society. And it says, quote, "In my view, women's workplace equality will have been set back decades by this crisis, the coronavirus pandemic, unless government intervenes to avert it." So the person then says, "I recently found out that COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting women worldwide. How have you been coping through lockdown as mothers and professionals, and what advice do you have for current and future mothers, considering that the global situation does not seem to be getting better?" You can take your time. I mean, it's a massive thing. So we're talking about...
You know what? If I'm going to be absolutely honest and transparent, I nearly cracked sometimes. Like, I literally felt like I was going to scream. I was screaming internally. And that was because I had to keep working. I was working. I was writing a lot of funding applications, trying to sort things out, because I sit at home, like I said, you know, I'm in more of the administrative side of things, and that continued. And it was really hard, because there was not one moment that we weren't apart, not one moment. and I just, it's hard. There's no time. Like, you already don't have time to yourself. You already don't have time to go to the toilet in private. You know, like literally that doesn't even exist. I don't have my shower time. I don't have my toilet time. I don't have my eating time. I don't have working time. And because of that, there are moments where, you know, it's fine. You just get along and you answer a million questions, or just, you know, sit there and just be quiet. No, I won't play with you. I'm so sorry. You feel like you're pushing your child away a lot. So it's like, I'm pushing him away because I need to work. So I'm really guilty about that. But at the same time, it's not that effective because I'm not really working that well. And so I'm stressing out about that. And there's no moment that you can just go and just be alone. So yeah, that was really hard. And yeah, the other part of that is, mother's house. Do you know what? Even if I didn't have a child, even if this happened, I wouldn't let that stop me from being a mother. I think for me, it's just, it's too important for me in my life. I still love my child. I still, you know, want him and a family in my life, but it's not easy. But at the same time, I'm not going to take that out on my desires, because the world isn't easy. It's not an easy place. What we all meant to do, just not do anything because it's difficult. No, I
Well, I was going to say, like, for me, because I interacted with quite a few professionals who are mothers during the lockdown and during the time, and everyone just kind of created little windows of, you know, I can speak to you between 11 to 3, but in the morning I'm doing this, or I'm homeschooling, or after these hours I'm not available. And I then also felt like I had autonomy to do the same. And that was kind of, I was very straight with regards to, on this day it's a bad day because I'm doing this with my child, and if I'm being really honest, and I'm not trying to be the optimist, but I felt like it is possible for it to actually help us from the standpoint of everyone was working remotely, and we're all kind of in the same boat. And yes, we do have the added equation of being mothers and, you know, single parents, etc., potentially. But I feel like because we're all working remotely, there is room for people to try to level the playing field, to try to go for the job that maybe they couldn't go for before because they didn't have the freedom of childcare, like you said, those issues. But being at home, it is hard, Grace. But potentially, I know of people that are working in the night time when the kids are asleep, and it is tiring and it is arduous. But I feel like potentially, if we push forward, we can make ground as women and as professionals moving forward during this kind of pandemic time. And this brings me to another question. Do you feel a responsibility to look after your child more than your partners as a woman?
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys are with partners, if you live with them or not.
Yeah, I mean, I did for the first, my child's 4, he'll be 5, and I actually breastfed until he was 2.
Well done.
Yeah, teeth were in, but I did for the first 2-3 years, and but we've got a better balance now. I mean, but to be fair, like, I look at all the letters, I sign everything, I make sure, you know, the clothes are ready in the morning, and I deal with all the kind of management element. But we do, especially in this period of time, my husband was like literally watching my son most of the time because of the fact I had to work, like physically watching. He's been cooking a little bit more, but still the recipes I've taught him, you know. So it's just still a case of like, I'm in charge in that sense, but definitely definitely we are balancing a little bit more. But for the first couple of years, and I had a child that was quite clingy, so it really depends on you and your child. A friend of mine, her daughter was clingy to the father, even though she was primary caregiver. But, you know, so it really depends on your child, I would say. But he was quite clingy to me, so it was like he was always hanging off of me with whatever I was doing.
And yeah, Nova's the same. I mean, obviously it's not been a year yet, so we're still figuring out how to be new parents and balance that between each other. We live together. But yeah, I think I found myself having to like micromanage, and it was just really annoying me because I just felt like, I guess I kind of, my idea of it was that, oh, this is 2020, like we're equal, and my partners are very, he's got a lot of really great feminine energy, and so I just kind of presumed it would be 50-50 and it would be like, yeah, but it isn't. And I think I kind of just I also had to accept myself that, like, as a mom, I don't know, there's just things like with the cleanliness, I think especially the first year, breastfeeding and everything, there's just things that you can't, unless you can have 2 of you, it's just never gonna be equal, I think, at the start. And I just had to accept that in some ways. It was only me that could do certain things for Nova. And I think that was really hard for me not hard for me to accept, but just to get my head around, like, okay, let me shift my perception of what I thought equal parenting meant, because it isn't what I thought it meant. And then we had to like create a schedule because it just wasn't working, especially during lockdown. Like Grace said, I was just constantly on all the time. I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything. So yeah, me and my partner had to create an actual schedule where it would be set days, you know, set hours of the day. We shook on it. It's like, this is happening. This has to happen. And it's getting difficult again now because my partner's working again now, so he's not in most days. So yeah, but I think definitely my experience anyway, at least for the first year, and like Grace has said, yeah, I feel like it was definitely a mothering, like as the main caregiver.
I have to agree with you, because I'm reading the question again. Do you feel a responsibility to look after your child more than your partner as a woman?
And I do actually feel that responsibility. I have felt that this year. Like sometimes I feel like if my partner's trying to put him to bed and he's been crying for a certain amount of time, I feel like, oh no, I need to go and do it. Even if like that's his dad, it doesn't matter how long it takes him. It takes me sometimes the same amount of time if my son's in a mood, but I still feel like, oh no, sorry, let me come and save you. Like, yeah.
I've done that.
I think it's interesting, because I'm gonna go across the grain.
Yeah.
Go against the grain, I should say. So, because it's the word responsibility to look after your child, and I think that both parents need to show equal responsibility in looking after the child. But I agree with you, Thea and Grace. During that first year, you are the giver, and not all women breastfeed, but in this case, I think all three of us had, and so you do have the necessity of being there to feed the child, the necessity of being there to be many things as the main caregiver. And in my case and Grace's case, and I'm not sure with Thea as well, you know, we opted to be at home during that first year, and my partner was working. So I was actually given the responsibility and took the responsibility to look after my child. But once she was fairly independent, I will say my answer to that question now is definitively no. I don't feel that it's my responsibility to look after her. I feel like it is our, as a unit, responsibility. And he's very hands-on. So in the morning, you know, I might make the breakfast, he might be combing her hair, and vice versa, and we interchange. But again, I think it's very dependent on the culture for your own household, and also your partner and your child. But I'm going to move us to the last question, which is, what is the most important thing cultural organizations can do to support mothers? I'm going to read the question again, because I want to put the caveat of we only have 3 minutes, okay? So we have to be succinct in our answers. What is the most important thing cultural organizations can do to support mothers?
Just provide flexibility of working. When I worked in institutions and organizations, it just, although my last one, they were a little bit flexible, but I wanted to work from home ideally. I wanted to do more things, and I don't think at that point in time it would have been it would work now, because everyone can see it's possible. So I just think for me personally, it's about flexibility. And I know people say childcare, but it's really tricky, because I wanted childcare right where I live, not necessarily one where I work. But I wouldn't want to take him on the train in commuter times. So mine is about flexibility of how I'm able to work and from what locations.
Yeah, I'd agree. And yeah, the only thing that Grace touched on, the childcare. So, but that just depends on where you prefer to have your child looked after, I guess. But I do think there should be more places that do have creches, so women have that option.
Subsidized rates, massively subsidized rates.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. I think just to add on to that as well, flexibility, of course, being key and being paramount. And I think we've started finding job shares are happening quite often now. And I think that's a brilliant kind of inclusion into the culture for organizations, whether it's job shares during pregnancy and job shares after, but not feeling like you are going to be out of work or you're going to lose your job, being able to have that alternative. Thank you both, Thea and Grace, and everyone that's attended. I'm going to hand across to Kajsa just to kind of give us her nice farewells as well before we wrap up. Over to you, Kajsa.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I just want to close this conversation by saying a huge thank you to our wonderful host Shelley and panelists Thea and Grace for their time and this wonderful talk. I also want to thank Sophie and Bridget for their great work, and also thank you for coming and joining in on this conversation. You as an attendee will receive a post-event email with an evaluation, as well as more information about the artists and their work, so you can continue to be connected to this event. These talks will also be re-released as a podcast, so do keep in touch with our social media so you'll be able to access them. We really hope that you enjoyed this, and thank you again for being here.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you for listening.